Hi, I'm Jeanette from Growth Unlimited, and we're talking about narcissism. How many times have you run into somebody that behaved in a way that you thought was narcissistic? Well, we've been talking about that. In another video, I told you about what the actual diagnostic criteria were for determining whether someone has narcissistic personality disorder. In this video, we're going to talk about what you can do if somebody is demonstrating narcissistic behaviors. And so let's get into it. First of all, if you have somebody who's treating you poorly because they are so focused on themselves that they can't get out of themselves, then the first thing and the most important thing that experts recommend that you do is don't. Think haunted house and get out of there the first chance that you can. However, there are situations where that's not possible. And sometimes there are situations where you really don't want to because you'd like to be with that person. But when those situations occur, you can do other things. First of all, the next suggestion is either kiss up or shut up. And now if they're your boss, or they have power over you in one way or another, if you fight with them about what they're saying or doing, it just makes it worse. So your best tactic is either to just simply kiss up and let them make them feel really, really good about what they are doing and about themselves, because that way they'll get off your back, or shut up and don't say anything. Just disengage and stay away from them within the framework of what you're doing. Okay, another thing, if you're doing business with someone who is a narcissist, make sure that you know what you want out of the arrangement and that you get paid first. Because a lot of times when if something goes wrong in the transaction, the narcissist you won't get paid. And so just make sure where you are, make sure that you lay things out and get paid up front. And then that way you don't get hurt that way. If you have somebody, sometimes you can kind of joke them out of it a little bit. And one of the things that a narcissist is really, really afraid of dealing with is negative opinions from somebody else. And so you can always ask that narcissist, hey, what would people think if they saw you saying and doing that? In some cases, that will get them to think, and they'll back off a little bit because they don't want to have the negative input from somebody else. And then finally, the last one that is on my list here is if you can't beat them, join them. Sometimes you can divert a bad behavior by being so bad yourself that they can see that it's not good. And that will sometimes help them make a change in what they are doing because they don't want to be embarrassed by you. So these are things that you can do if it really doesn't matter to you a whole lot. But if you are in a situation where it does matter, and there are people that really you really need to have in your life or want to have in your life, then you need to have a way to manage your own emotions when you're dealing with somebody who has a high level of narcissism. So there are basically two types of narcissists. There are vulnerable narcissists and grandiose narcissists. The vulnerable narcissist is a person who doesn't have a lot of self-esteem, and they are being narcissistic partially to protect themselves from being attacked, and partially because they just simply don't understand, they don't like themselves, and they are trying hard to have a better opinion of themselves. The grandiose narcissist, on the other hand, is the person on the other end of the spectrum who just simply doesn't have the capacity to understand they have limitations. That narcissist is totally, completely stuck on themselves and on their own importance. and they see it no other way. Now, so you need to determine which type of narcissist you're dealing with, because you're going to deal with them differently. And if it's a situation where you don't have an option of not dealing with them, you need to figure out a way to deal with them, whatever type that they are. So, the vulnerable narcissist is somebody that is not as out there with their emotions as the grandiose narcissist is. And so you might not realize that they're undercutting you or getting in your way until after it's happened. If you're trying to put people in your family or on your work team to best use, the grandiose narcissist is going to be your best ally in this situation, because you can, if you can get that person on board with the goal that you have or your group's goals, they're going to be more able to engage in the process. The next thing is acknowledge your annoyance. Now, if somebody is irritating you, a narcissist can be antagonistic and get under your skin really well. If you're trying to get something done and one person is always interrupting or trying to shine the spotlight on him or herself, recognizing where that frustration is coming from can help you deal with it. You won't get caught up in feeling that it might be your fault if you can recognize where it's actually coming from. And that gives you strength that you can then either deal with it or put a stop to it. Okay, the next step is appreciate where that behavior comes from. Vulnerable narcissists are working hard to feel better about themselves, which is why they become sneaky and undercutting. They might question your authority just to create mischief. Once you recognize that they're coming from a place of insecurity, you can provide them with just enough reassurance to get them to settle down and focus on what needs to be done. Too much reassurance and you'll fan their egocentric flames, but the right amount will allow them to calm down and get to the task at hand. Next, evaluate the context of the situation. Narcissism is not an all-or-nothing personality trait, although a narcissist sees things in an all-or-nothing basis. Some situations can elicit a person's insecurities more than others. Let's say a woman who got turned down for a job and then had to work with the person who got it, especially if she wanted that job very, very much, will get very, very insecure. And her insecurity will only worsen over time. This can lead her to become defensive, narcissistic, vindictive, and spiteful. If you know someone like this, it's important to remember the situation that helped create the monster that you now have to interact with. So maintain a positive outlook. If you're dealing with a narcissist who derives pleasure from watching somebody else suffer, then seeing the pain they cause will only egg them on to do more aggressive counter behaviors. So don't look ruffled. Just kind of ignore the process. And if you're feeling annoyed, you can kind of put that down and keep it under control. Eventually, their behavior, if you ignore it, will decrease in frequency. Furthermore, by keeping all the other tips we've talked about in this video in mind, you can help ease the situation so that things can actually improve. Don't let yourself get derailed. It's easy to lose your own sense of purpose or goals when a narcissist tries to take center stage. You don't need to attend to everything that person says or does, no matter how much he or she clamors for your attention. Find the balance between moving ahead in the direction that you planned on going and alleviating the vulnerable narcissist's anxieties and insecurities. If it's a grandiose type of narcissist, you may want to acknowledge his or her feelings and then move on anyhow. Keep your sense of humor. Calling a narcissist bluff may mean that you ignore the person, but it also might mean that you meet that bluff with a laugh at least once in a while. Without being cruel about it, you can point out the inappropriateness of their behavior with a smile or a joke. This would be particularly appropriate for the grandiose type of narcissist, who will probably find it entertaining and just possibly might find it instructive. And then lastly, recognize that the person might need help. Because some narcissists truly have low self-esteem and profound feelings of inadequacy, it's important to recognize when they can benefit from the help of a professional. Despite the belief that personality is immutable, psychotherapy research shows that people can change even long-standing behaviors like narcissism. Bolstering that individual's self-esteem may not be something you can tackle on your own, but it's something you can work on with outside help. I hope these ideas are helpful for you. I hope they've given you some ideas of what you can do when you're in difficult situations with people who want to be difficult. I'd like to hear what you thought. And I'd like to hear any ideas you have on how you can deal with someone who is having narcissistic activities. Please leave your comments below and share this with your friends if you liked the video. If you haven't already, subscribe. I'd love to have you as a viewer, and I'd love to let you know what's coming up in future content. And subscribing will give you that information. Thanks so much for joining me, and have a wonderful day. I'll see you next time. Bye now.